Section 3, Introduction to PowerPoint Tools. In this section we'll consider Smart Art, stock images, and the design and designer functions. Smart Art is a fantastic tool which boasts a catalogue of visual options to help you display your content in a more image-focused style. It's a great shortcut to translate text-heavy content into a more visual style of presentation, forcing you to reduce the word count on each slide. If you were to insert a Smart Art, you've got a wide range of options available, from lists to cycles to matrices and pyramid diagrams. Within each of these styles, you've got a host of options to choose from, and there'll be something for everyone in terms of your preferences and what your audience needs to see. When you've chosen your style of Smart Art, you can then edit the content through the Smart Art text tool, as you can see here. The great thing about Smart Art is that it very quickly generates an image that would take quite a while to build if you were using individual components. Sometimes, however, the Smart Art editing can be quite limiting in terms of where you can take the design once it's in place. You can, however, convert that Smart Art back into shapes, so you have then text and shape individual elements that you can manipulate and format.
Smart Art was a revolutionary find for me in terms of the PowerPoint application. It's a great way of taking text-heavy content and presenting it in a more visual style. One of the great things about Smart Art is there's loads of different ways of interacting with it and bringing it into your content. But we're going to start with the most straightforward, which is inserting, from the Insert tab, Smart Art onto your deck. You can see as soon as we open the Smart Art option, you've already got 8 different categories, each with their own full library of options and variations for you to bring into your content. One of the easiest to learn from and use as a guide is the list process. And I find myself inserting Smart Art lists in almost every presentation I do, because you quite often are trying to convey lots of different information when you present. And the Smart Art list is a great way of turning what can be really bland text bullet points into something more visually appealing for the audience. Before we think about putting information into our Smart Art itself, let's have a look at what's happened to the ribbon. We can see here we've got variations available for changing the actual list itself. And then we've got a color changing palette here, depending on the style of your presentation or what you're trying to achieve in terms of color. And you can also change the format, making the boxes more rounded, giving them a 3-dimensional element. Great options and variations available. So when you start adding Smart Art into your presentations, take the time to play around with the different options available. If we think about actually putting information onto the Smart Art, you've got 2 options. You can deliver information straight into the picture itself, or you can use the editing pane over here. It's a good idea to get comfortable using both options, because depending on the content, depending on the Smart Art design you're using, some are easier to manipulate than others. When you click out of the Smart Art, you'll see the editing pane disappears and you're left with the image. Anytime you want to get back and edit the content, you just click anywhere into the Smart Art itself. When we think about these arrows up here, we can add new lines, delete lines, promote and demote, which is a really important element which I'll describe. And you can also change the order very easily, just using these up and down arrows. So it's very easy to manipulate. When we start thinking about the promote and demote function, what that is doing is you are making a piece of information or a piece of content more or less important in terms of the Smart Art. And you'll see the impact that this has. At the moment, we've got 3 lines all given their own importance and place in the Smart Art. If I was to demote test 2, you'll see that it then becomes a subcategory of test 1. We can do the same thing with test 3. We can demote that, and it again becomes a subcategory of test 2 and test 1. You can then continue to promote or demote depending on the order in which and way in which you want your information to display. There is always going to be a have to be a most promoted or most significant element of your smart art for the picture to be displayed properly. But it's good, again, similar with the colouring, similar with the formatting, to play around with the promote and demote function. In smart art is converting existing text into smart art designs instead of inserting the smart art in the first place. So here for the example, I've put some text on the screen in a bullet point list. If we think back to the smart art promote and demote function, I've already suggested a demotion of these 2 points because they have been tabbed forward from the information above it. I can insert another point in the list, and by simply clicking tab on the keyboard, I have demoted that point compared to the last one above it. I can undo that, take it back to the same promotion level as first time, but just to give you more of a visual cue, I'm going to demote it again for the purposes of smart art. You'll see I'm on the home tab, and because I have this text box selected, convert to smart art has been highlighted as an option. I can then choose from any of the smart art designs, and just for ease of showing you how it's converted, I'm going to put this information into a list. You can see the same promotion demotion level has been included from the bullet point list I had. This smart art has an option for adding pictures, which I'll show you how to do that. And we're also going to change the size slightly to fill the slide better. If I show you what will happen if we click here, if I was to promote that, that information then gets called out as its own point. So really good tool for, we've immediately taken very bland information in the bullet point list and presented it now in the smart art format. You've got full control over whether each point is listed on its own or with the ones above it. And it makes it a really fun way to start playing around with where your information sits on the page and the significance and call out for each of your points for your audience. If you want to add a picture, you can add it within this pane, or you can literally click on the icons over here. This is asking me to add a picture from file. And you can do that, and you can see it fits nicely within the smart art format. So this is just another example of how you can take information and convert it into smart art just by using the options available to you in your home ribbon. You might actually find that the way it presents the information for you to adapt, it can be quite limiting, particularly when we're trying to manipulate the size of the smart art design on the screen. Because it moves everything as one, there can be times where if you're using text and images, you can actually struggle to fit everything that you want to put into the design in the smart art bracket. So what to do is you can think about taking what is a smart art design and turning it into objects. So what I'll do before I show you that is just clarify how to add these images that I have here. So you can see there's a blank space here and it's giving you an option to add an image. If I right click on that shape, I can change the graphic and then use any of the stock images or icons or a picture from a file that I have on my computer. So for this, I'm going to use a stock image, which automatically loads the image gallery from PowerPoint. I'm just going to pick the first one that I like just now. So put this one in, and that will then drop that image into the smart art. Now, we've got all the components that we want, but I want more freedom in terms of customizing the individual elements of this design. So by clicking on the smart art itself, I'm going to right click, and I can then convert this smart art into shapes. What that does is it now gives me a grouped collection of shapes with the text and images, and because I want to change the individual elements, I'm going to right click again and ungroup everything. So now every single piece of this smart art has been individually separated for me to use and adapt as I see fit. So I want to get rid of these small hexagons. So I'm just going to delete these. So just clicking on them and deleting from my keyboard. I'll get rid of those little white diagrams. And then instead of the images all being locked together, I can now start moving them around the screen. So depending on where I want them, I can rearrange them. I can change the sizes. So individual components are free to control. And what you start to see is there can be issues when you put text in shapes with the size of the text and the size of the shape. So there is a good idea to get into is instead of having the text embedded in the shape itself, I can delete that text, insert a text box anywhere on the screen, and now I have text separate to the shape that I can fully manipulate. So I can change the shape and position of the shape, which doesn't impact the text. I can change the text separately to the shape. If I was to adapt this object, for example, you can see that having the text attached to the shape can be problematic. So this is just a way to show you how to get more freedom. Once you've used the Smart Art to get your basic design, you can separate the objects and text and have full formatting capability over the Smart Art design. So this is really getting you into the freedom of using PowerPoint to adapt your content how you see fit.
PowerPoint boasts an impressive library of images, icons, and 3D models for you to include within your presentation content. It's unlikely you wouldn't be able to find the style of image that would suit the content and presentation you're trying to deliver. There's no excuse for having text-only presentations when you start exploring the number of different things you can insert via the Insert ribbon. I really encourage you to explore all the different options available and work out where you can include these in your backgrounds or shapes. And when you start thinking about these from an animation perspective as well, it
The
really brings
design
your
and designer
presentations to
tools are
life.
great for generating new ideas on how to present your content. The suggestions include everything from color changes, background formatting, and content arrangements to make the most of the information. If you don't make use of these tools, you're missing out on understanding the full spectrum of options available through PowerPoint. And if you're struggling for ideas or you're new to formatting generally, it's a great place to get started. The design and designer functions. These are two of the quickest ways to completely revamp your slide content. Design is one of the tabs on the ribbon, and it will generate for you loads of different ways of formatting backgrounds to suit all different styles and preferences. And you're seeing with one click, everything from the color to the font is changing. And these options go on for quite a substantial library. Got a few personal favorites in there. And so there's no excuse for people that aren't comfortable coming up with their own designs. It's a great way, great shortcut for jumping straight into something a bit more interesting. As well as the different design options here, you've got color schemes as well that you can click through. And you can see that I've dropped in some icons on this page and they're really quite messy. But the designer tool takes it to another level. So not only can we completely manipulate the formatting color scheme that we're choosing, the designer option will give us different ways of presenting the information that we've dropped onto our slide. You can see the wide variety of options that will give you, and depending on what your theme is, sometimes that will limit the design options available. So the simpler theme that you have applied, the more chance it will have some creative design options for you. So these are one-click options for completely revamping the way your information is displayed. Now it's time to put your new learning into practice. In these activities, you will format smart art variations, as well as experimenting with PowerPoint